Let's now take a look at that Mospline, and Mospline is really a parametric spline generator object with a complete L system built into it. Well, I'm sure that to many of you L system doesn't mean much, but L system in Cina 4D is really called a turtle, and I will show you that turtle system in the last lesson, and the reason for it is it's really in the technical realm of things and somewhat complicated, and I think you will be better off without it at the moment. So we'll now cover these two modes, this simple and spline, and we will cover the turtle or L system or Lindenmayer system at the very end of this training. So let's start with the simple mode. Currently you can see if I hide my axis that this is really nothing spectacular. It's just a simple green line in the viewport, so it really doesn't look like much, but let's go briefly over this first setting. So this should be familiar. So start defines the starting point, endpoint defines the endpoint, and the offset of that spline. So really consider this as a spline, which it actually is. So this grow mode currently won't do really much in this simple presentation, but it really determines how the spline will be built if this end or start or even this offset is animated. So it can grow a complete spline or in separate segments. We will cover this later on examples, so it will be much clearer. These guys, this extend, start or end, will really determine what happens with the spline when it shoots over this 100 and 0 values. And that also may seem a little bit complicated, but I'll show you that in fact it is not. So the most important thing about this Mospline is that it can accept both effectors and particle modifiers. This is really important, so you have a lot of creative freedom on this Mospline. Now let me show you the most simplest usage of this Mospline, and under this simple tab you have a bunch of options. So first is really simple, it's the length. Steps is the number of points on that spline. Segments, if I will play with this value now, it will do nothing, but once I start playing with these settings, then it will all make sense. And this simply rotates this spline according to selected axis. So it will rotate in heading, pitch or bank direction. And let's say if I set this to maybe say 180 and increase this segment, so I will get a new segment for each of these numbers, so completely new spline, relatively speaking. We can go really high, let's say 50, and this is still all parametric. You can control these guys. Let me just frame this a little bit. You can control these guys with this curve, bend and twist. So you can curve those guys, you can bend them in any direction. You can already see that these are really interesting results. Or currently this twist won't do anything simply because the twist is twisting the spline in a direction we cannot see. So it's really twisting it like this, and you really cannot see the results. Let me undo that. If you enable other of these guys, you will see the result of that twisting. So let's zero this out. This width is simply the width of this spline in the viewport, and it really determines the width of this if you drop this under another generator. So maybe I could show you that all these effectors are working on that Mospline. So let's add maybe a random effector, and you will see the results. It's chaotic. I will in fact create a fall off, let's say spherical, and Here under effector, I will change this to noise, so we have a temporal value, and we'll hit play, and you can see the result. So maybe I will move this guy upwards. So a really flexible tool. So maybe I can, maybe I could even scale this noise, and you will see that it will deform it a little bit different. So maybe this was a really good example for this scale of the noise. Let me stop this, go back. And I showed you this because I wanted you to understand that all these parameters still work. So regardless of what you set in terms of effectors or the values you change here, you can change the segmentation. Those guys will still work. So that is really awesome. Let's stop this. And let's in fact have a bit of fun with this. I will set this to 360, so we have a complete nice circular Mospline. I'll add a step effector to this, and under the parameters I will enable position, and I think that would be, yes, it would be Y. So let's say 100 on Y. And if you thought that you're unable to set materials to your Mospline, then you are wrong. You can apply hair materials to your splines. So that means you can apply the material to Mospline. So let's create something really simple. I will get rid of one of these and load just a simple color and apply this to our Mospline. Now you won't see anything until I do a render, and in fact you can see it really renders that spline red. Now, even though you have a bunch of settings here, those guys under any effector will still work. For example, you can map this to this spline graph, so you can create really interesting effects like black holes and stuff like that. So really powerful. Maybe we could even expand on this setup, and I will add a time effector and maybe set. You see, rotations really won't work on the spline because you will be simply rotating the points. So by effectors, you're affecting the points, and pretty much the position values will work only. Let's set this also to, let's say, maybe 50, something like this. So this is a time effector, and it works only with time, and we have to press play to see the results. So how about this? You can get some really cool results with it. We stop this. Now you shouldn't forget that this is an actual spline, so you can maybe create a profile for it. You can also create a sweep NURBS and use this Mospline as a path for this profile, so it will work. And one thing that is really important now, the width of this profile is controlled by the width setting on Mospline. So let's enter maybe 5 here, and you can see the result. And that's another way for you to render the Mospline. You can apply the material to sweep NURBS. And this parametric approach where you set everything with values is really great. So you could even set this hand scale, let's say 10, and these guys will work as expected. Currently, this Mospline is set to be seen in the viewport in full shape. You can change that to aligns, and then things will be much more easier to see. So this is in fact a real geometry. If I hit NB or enable gradient shading lines, you can see that this is really dense, and now these steps will be explained really easily. So let's put 50, maybe even a little bit lower, 25, and always make sure you use minimum amount of geometry needed. So maybe you could create some sort of a sun or stuff like that. So very, very powerful. How about this? Imagine doing this by hand. This is simply a nightmare, even if it is possible, but I highly doubt it. So imagine the possibilities, and this Mospline is a generator, so that means that other generators can work with it. We can actually get rid of this material, maybe create something interesting, let's say like maybe this color. We will apply that to our sweep nerves. Now, as I was saying, this guy works with any other generator. So let's have some fun with the cloner, and maybe this time we will clone the light. So I have to set some settings here for the light, otherwise it won't be really visible until I do that. So let's enable this visible option, and this radius. You can see if I do a render now that light is really wide, and I have to tune this outer distance to, let's say, maybe 50. Let's go even lower, maybe 30. And if I render now, you will see that this light is much smaller, which is in fact very good. And we will now drop it under cloner, and since this Mospline is an object, we will clone it on the object and drop the Mospline inside. So now we have all these lights cloned onto Mospline. So I will just choose one and I will offset it, and notice that if I get to 99%, I'm on the end of the spline. If I will enter 100, it will snap to the beginning. That is because of this loop, guys. So if you turn it off, 100% will mean the end of the actual spline. Now let's do a test render and see what do we have, and this is the result. And actually we could make this a little bit more interesting and add certain lens effects. So maybe we will add, let's try this purple one. I think that would be really good enough, and the brightness is okay, but the scale of these guys should be lower. So let's say 50%, maybe even 30, like this, and yeah, this should be acceptable. This in fact looks really nice, and I'm pretty sure you can already imagine lots of applications for this guy, and how flexible, how vast this Mospline system is. So maybe go a step further with this setup, since I want to show you that you can load particle modifiers here. So particle modifiers in release 13 are here under simulate particles. So let's actually tear off this menu, and let's choose any of these guys. So maybe I will go with the turbulence. So if I hit turbulence, unfortunately Cinema4D doesn't automatically load particle modifiers into fields, so you will have to do that manually. So I will drag this into fields, and make sure you enable include, so it will include this turbulence into a simulation. So you can see that this guy changed, and if you press play, you will see that effect live, and this is a little bit odd. So let's increase the scale, something like 500 will do. So let's enter 500 here, and this is a really interesting effect, and I think I will lower this frequency. Let's go even lower, so maybe like 35 or something like that. So the effects you can achieve with this are simply stunning. So something like this. How about this? This looks really cool. So maybe we could even get rid of these sweep nerves. Once again, load a hair material. Go with hair material and turn everything off. get rid of one of these guys, load maybe a red color, and I will apply it to my Mospline. So if I hit render now, you can see that this is somewhat of a different effect. And if you were maybe wondering why these guys are on the middle of the spline, even though we set it 100% offset here, the reason is this 2 effector. So because the time effector is really moving this spline in time, and this cloner should happen after these two guys. I really hope that makes sense. So if I move this guy down, you will see the difference. So now it's aware of that position information value from these two guys that are applied to Mospline. So this is really important. Those priorities can really drive you insane, especially in rigging, but in MoGraph that can happen too. So now if I press play, we have a really nice and interesting effect. So it can be some sort of a crazy dimension portal or deep sea jellyfishes or something like that. Let's in fact render a really small animation. So I will just set anti-aliasing here to best. Let's leave it at that, and I will make a preview. So let's go with double of this size, and we can leave everything else at default. I will hit OK, and I'll give it some time and pause the video until this guy calculates the preview. So, and here we are at the end, and let me scale this picture viewer, and let's hit play and see how that looks like. So this is a really interesting effect, and I really encourage you to explore this Mospline because it's simply mind-blowingly fantastic. Now let me show you this Mospline spline mode, and let's in fact get rid of all this so we have a nice clean start. And in this mode, in this spline mode, any spline you load here, you see we don't have access to simple settings anymore, so they are gone. Now we can load any spline. So let's create some spline, some arbitrary spline like this. So I can draw one. And once loaded in source spline, that spline turns into a Mospline, because in this mode, when it's not assigned to Mospline, you really cannot do much with it. So once that it's turned into a Mospline, you can do a whole lot of things with it. So just to prove you that this is a Mospline now, let me show you how these guys work. And if this happens, or if you simply want to reverse where the start is, you'll have to simply select all points on that original spline and do a reverse sequence command. Now this should work really as you would expect. So that's a really nice tip to know. And once again, there are so many applications of everything I show you. You just have to think in that way. So let's create a particle emitter. So let me just establish some values here. So let's go with 100. I will scale down this emitter, and I believe this question popped up on forum a few times. So let me resolve this with a really simple setup. And what I want to do here is I want to align this guy to the spline. So all the basic tools and tags you can find here can work with this Mospline. So it's really imperative for you to know a few things about Syna4D in general, otherwise you won't be able to utilize MoGraph to full extent. So now it's just a question of thinking of this Mospline as a regular spline. So let's load a spline here, and you will see this guy pop into the position of spline. Now you don't have to do anything with this align to spline anymore, because everything now is controlled with this Mospline. So if I press play, and in fact, let's create a simple animation. So I will add a keyframe for start at the frame 0. Maybe I will go to the last frame, and let's go with 50%. Otherwise, it could be a little bit too fast. So keyframe here. Now I have a burning fuse, and it looks a little bit odd because of this setting here. Currently, it's generating the Mospline from this guy on the vertices. So if you set this to even, you won't have that crazy behavior. So imagine this as a burning fuse that will reach some sort of a bomb or stuff like that. So very, very interesting stuff. Now, if you remember from the beginning of this lesson, I was talking about this turtle mode, and you will notice a small sort of a tree-like object, but let's just have a quick glance of these guys, and we will cover this at the very end of our training, because I believe then this will look a little less scary than it is looking now. And in this turtle mode or L system mode, there is a potential for creating virtually anything, and although it is targeted for creating plant-like structures and fractal structures, it can be used in many other ways. So we will do advanced setups at the very end of our training. Now we will apply everything that we learned so far, and we will create some generic setups which can show you the real-world application of MoGraph, and it's a fantastic tool. So we are now starting with mini projects in our next lesson.